Ciao, welcome to Reading with Bella. I'm Christina, and I'm so glad that you're here with me today. If you're new, welcome in. If you're returning, welcome back. No matter how long you've been here, I always appreciate your time. We are coming back to the reading series. I have my Jabberwocky book pulled out of a box of books. I've found it a while, probably about 2 weeks ago in my books. And I was like, oh, I'm so excited I get to start reading again. So if you're new, I am a little over a quarter of a way through the book. And this is just a variety of poems and other items written by Lewis Carroll. I found this book in New Orleans, Louisiana, in the United States, when I was there for work. So I've had this for a while, and I was inspired by Ashley at Stitchin' Ain't Easy to read this book in particular, and by Granny D, right, who does some amazing readings on her channel as well. So that's just a reintroduction if you've been here, and if you haven't been here, it's an introduction into what we're doing. So right now we are reading Phantasmagoria and Other Poems, published in 1869. Let me move the bookmark. Here we go. Part 1. Phantasmagoria, Canto I The Trystyng. One winter night at 9:30, cold, tired, and cross and muddy, I had come home too late to dine, and supper with cigars and wine was waiting in the study. There was a strangeness in the room, and something white and wavy was standing near me in the gloom. I took it for the carpet broom, left by that careless slavey. But presently the thing began to shudder and to sneeze, on which I said, "Come, come, my man, that's the most inconsiderate plan. Less noise there, if you please." "I've caught a cold," the thing replies, "out there upon the landing." I turned to look in some surprise, and there before my very eyes a little ghost was standing. He trembled when he caught my eye, and got behind a chair. "How came you here?" I said, "and why? I never saw a thing so shy. Come out, don't shiver there." He said, "I'll gladly tell you how, and also tell you why. But," here he gave a little bow, "you're in so bad a temper now, you'd think it all a lie. And as to be in a fright, allow me to remark that ghosts have just as good a right in every way to fear the light as men to fear the dark. No plea," I said, "can well excuse such cowardice in you, for ghosts can visit when they choose, whereas we humans can't refuse to grant the interview." He said, "A flutter of alarm is not unnatural, is it? I really feared you meant some harm. But now I see that you are calm. Let me explain my visit. The last ghost left you on the 3rd. Since then you've not been haunted. But, as he never sent us word, 'twas quite by accident we heard that anyone was wanted. A spectre has first choice by right in filling up a vacancy, then phantom, goblin, elf, and sprite. If all these fail them, they invite the nicest ghoul that they can see. The spectre said the place was low, and that you kept bad wine. So as a phantom had to go, and I was first, of course, you know, I couldn't well decline. No doubt," I said, "they settled who was fittest to be sent. Yet still to choose a brat like you to haunt a man of 42 was no great compliment." "I'm not so young, sir," he replied, "as you might think. The fact is, in caverns by the waterside and other places that I've tried, I've had a lot of practice. But I've never taken yet a strict domestic part, and in my flurry I forgot the 5 good rules of etiquette we have to know by heart. My sympathies were warming fast toward the little fellow. He was so very much aghast at having found a man at last, and looked so scared and yellow. At least, I said, I'm glad to find a ghost is not a dumb thing. But pray sit down, you'll feel inclined, if, like myself, you have not dined, to take a snack of something. Though certainly you don't appear a thing to offer food to, and then I shall be glad to hear, if you will say them loud and clear, the rules that you allude to. Thanks, you shall hear them by and by. This is a piece of luck. What may I offer you? Said I. Well, since you are so kind, I'll try a little bit of duck. One slice, and may I ask you for a little drop more gravy? I sat and looked at him in awe, for certainly I never saw a thing so white and wavy. And still he seemed to grow more white, more vapory, and waver. Seen in the dim and flickering light, he proceeded to recite his maxims of behavior. Canto II, his 5 rules. My first, but don't suppose, he said, I'm settling you a riddle, is, if your victim be in bed, don't touch the curtains at his head, but take it in the middle, and wave it slowly to and fro, as if the wind was at it, and in a minute's time or so, he'll be awake, and this you'll know, by hearing him say, Drat it! And here you must go on, no pretense, make the first observation, wait for the victim to commence, no ghost of any common sense begins a conversation. If he should say, How came you here? The way that you began, sir. In such a case your course is clear, just as you please, my little dear, or any other answer. But if the wretch says nothing more, you'd best perhaps curtail your exertions, and go and shake the door, and then, if he begins to snore, you'll know the thing's a failure. By day, if he should be alone, at home, or on a walk, you merely give a hollow groan to indicate the kind of tone in which you mean to talk. But if you find him with his friends, the thing is rather harder. In such a case, success depends on picking up some candle end or butter in the larder. With this you make a kind of slide. It answers best with suet, on which you must contrive to glide and swing yourself from side to side. One soon learns how to do it. The second tells us what is right in ceremonious calls. First burn a blue or crimson light, a thing I quite forgot tonight, then scratch the doors or the walls. I said, You'll visit here no more if you attempt the guy. If I'll have no bonfires on my floor, and as for scratching at the door, I'd like to see you try. The third was written to protect the interest of the victim, and tells us, as I recollect, to treat him with a grave respect, and not to contradict him. That's plain, said I, as tear and tret, to any comprehension. I only wish some ghosts I'd met would not so constantly forget the maxim that you mention. Perhaps, he said, you first transgress the laws of hospitality. You'll mostly come off second best when you omit to treat your guests with proper cordiality. If you address a ghost as thing, or strike him with a hatchet, he is permitted by the king to drop all formal parleying, and then you're sure to catch it. The fourth prohibits trespassing where other ghosts are quartered, and those convicted of the thing, unless when pardoned by the king, must instantly be slaughtered. I said, That rule appears to me wanting in common sense. To slaughter does not mean, said he, to kill with us, and that, you see, makes a great difference. In fact, we're simply cut up small, ghosts soon unite anew. The process scarcely hurts at all, not more than when you're what you call cut up by a review. The fifth is one you may prefer, that I should not quote entire. The king must be addressed as Sir. This, from a simple courtier, is all the laws require. But, should you wish to do the thing with out-and-out politeness, accost him as my goblin king, and always use in answering the phrase, your royal whiteness. I'm getting rather hoarse, I fear, after so much reciting, so if you don't object, my dear, we'll try a glass of bitter beer. I think it looks inviting. Canto III Scarmoges. And did you really walk, said I, on such a wretched night? I always fancied ghosts could fly, if not exactly in the sky, yet at a fairish height. It is very well, he said, for kings to fly above the earth, but phantoms often find that wings, like many other pleasant things, cost more than they are worth. Spectres, of course, are rich, and so can buy them from the elves, but we prefer to keep below. They're stupid company, you know, for any but themselves. For though they claim to be exempt from pride, they treat a phantom as something quite beneath contempt, just as no turkey ever dreamt of noticing a bantam. They seem too proud, said I, to go to houses such as mine. For how did they contrive to know so quickly that the place was low, and that I kept bad wine? Inspector Kobold called on you, the little ghost began. Here I broke in. Inspector who? Inspecting ghosts is something new. Explain yourself, my man. His name is Kobold, said my guest, one of the spectre order. You'll very often see him dressed in a yellow gown, a crimson vest, and a nightcap with a border. But he tried the Brocken business first, but caught a sort of chill, so came to England to be nursed, and here it took the form of thirst, which he complains of still. The remedy, he says, is port, which he compares to nectar, and as the inns where it is bought have always been his chief resort, we call him the inspector. I bear it as well as any man, the washiest of witticisms, and nothing could be sweeter than my temper till the ghost begin some most provoking criticisms. Cooks need not be indulged in waste, yet still you'd better teach them. Dishes should have some sort of taste. Pray, why are all the cruets placed where nobody can reach them? That man of yours will never earn his living as a waiter. Is that queer thing supposed to burn? It's far too dismal a concern to call a moderator. The duck was tender, but the peas were very much too old. And just remember, if you please, the next time you have toasted cheese, don't let them send it cold. You'd find the bread improved, I think, by getting better flour. And have you anything to drink that looks a little less like ink and isn't quite so sour? Then peering round with curious eyes, he muttered, Goodness gracious! And so went on to criticize, Your room's an inconvenient size. It's neither snug nor spacious. That narrow window, I expect, serves but to let the dusk in. I cried, But please recollect 'twas fashioned by an architect who pinned his faith on Rushkin. I don't care who he was, sir, or on whom he pinned his faith. Constructed by whatever law, so poor a job I never saw, as I'm a living wraith. What a remarkable cigar! How much are they a dozen? I growled, No matter what they are, you're getting as familiar as if you were my cousin. Now that's a thing I will not stand, and so I'll tell you flat. Aha, he said, we're getting grand, taking the bottle in his hand. I'll soon arrange for that. And here he took careful aim and gaily cried, Here goes! I tried to dodge it as it came, but somehow caught it all the same, exactly on my nose. And I remember nothing more that I can clearly fix, till I was sitting on the floor, repeating 2 and 4 and 5 and 6. But really past I never learned, nor guessed I only knew, that when at last my sense returned, the lamp neglected dimly burned, the fire was getting low. Through driving mist I seemed to see a form of sheet and bone, and found that he was telling me the whole of his biography in such a familiar tone. Canto IV Hys Nouryture. Let's see how long this one is. Okay, so we'll finish Canto IV, and then we'll be done for the reading. Oh, when I was a little ghost, a merry time had we. Each seated on his favorite post, we chumped and chawed the buttered toast they gave us for our tea. That story is in print, I cried. Don't say it's not, because I know it well as Bradshaw's Guide, the ghost uneasily replied. He hardly thought it was. It's not in nursery rhymes, and yet I almost think it is. 3 little ghostesses were set on postesses, as you know, they ate their buttered toastesses. I have the book, so if you doubt it, I turned to search the shelf. Don't stir, he cried, we'll do without it. I now remember all about it. I wrote the thing myself. It came out in a monthly, or at least my agent said it did. Some literary swell who saw it and thought it seemed adapted the magazine he edited. My father was a brownie, sir. My mother was a fairy. The notion had occurred to her the children would be happier if they were taught to vary. The notion soon became a craze, and when it once began, she brought us all out in different ways. One was a pixie, 2 were fays, another was a banshee. The fetch and kelpie went to school and gave a lot of trouble. Next came a poltergeist and ghoul, and then 2 trolls, which broke the rule, a goblin and a double. If that's a snuff-box on the shelf, he added with a yawn, I'll take a pinch. Next came an elf, and then a phantom, that's myself, and last a leprechaun. One day some spectres chanced to call, dressed in the usual white. I stood and watched them in the hall, and couldn't make them out at all, they seemed so strange a sight. I wondered what on earth they were that looked all head and sack, but mother told me not to stare, and then she twitched me by the hair and punched me in the back. Since then I've often wished that I had been a spectre born, but what's the use? He heaved a sigh. They are the ghost nobility, and look on us with scorn. My phantom life was soon begun. When I was barely 6, I went out with an older one, and just at first thought it fun, and went at it like bricks. I've haunted dungeons and castles and towers wherever I was sent. I often sat and howled for hours, drenched to the skin with driving showers, upon a battlement. It's quite old-fashioned now to groan when you begin to speak. This is the newest thing in tone, and here it chilled me to the bone. He gave an awful squeak. Perhaps, he added, to your ear that sounds an easy thing. Try it yourself, my little dear. It took me something like a year without constant practicing. And when you've learned to squeak, my man, yet caught the double sob, you're pretty much where you began. Just try and gibber if you can. That's something like a job. I've tried it and can only say I'm sure you couldn't do it, even if you practice night and day, unless you have a turn that way and natural ingenuity. Shakespeare, I think, it is who treats of ghosts in days of old, who gibbered in the Roman streets, dressed, if you recollect, in sheets. They must have found it cold. I've often spent 10 pounds on stuff and dressing as a double, but thought it answers as a puff. It never has effect enough to make it worth the trouble. Long bills soon quenched the little thirst I had for being funny. The setting up is always worst. Such heaps of things you want at first. One must be made of money. For instance, take a haunted tower with skull, crossbones, and sheet. Blue lights to burn, say, 2 an hour. Condensing lens of extra power, instead of chains complete. What with the things you have to hire, the fitting on the robe, and testing all the colored fire, the outfit itself would tire the patience of a Job. And then they're so fastidious, the haunted house committee. I've often known them make a fuss because a ghost was French or Russ, or even from the city. Some dialects are objected to, for one, the Irish brogue is. And then for all you have to do, £1 a week they offer you, and find yourself in bogies. And then we come to the next canto. And I will stop here and continue in another video soon. I hope you've enjoyed. And as always, be the change you wish to see in the world, everyone. Ciao bella!